Hi, I'm Brian Abbett from Cornell University. So if you just introduced me, I'm going to be talking about some antiferroelectric switching pathways I've been studying in lead-zirconate. I'll also touch on the relationship between polar and non-polar states here. This work was all done in the Feeney group in collaboration with Karen Raid. And before beginning, I'd like to thank the organizers for having me, and the NSF and the ARO for funding support. So antiferroelectricity was kind of first discovered back in 1951 by Shirane. He observed this double hysteresis loop under an applied electric field. He put forth a tentative explanation for what's going on here, which was that the low electric field, you have a nonpolar ground state, and therefore you get a linear dielectric response. But a higher electric field, the system's transitioned into a polar phase, and so you get this ferroelectric-like hysteresis response. Karen Raves has then recently re-examined this topic of antiferroelectricity and put forth a more formal criteria for what makes a material be antiferroelectric. And she says that a system must be able to have an applied electric field drive it from its nonpolar ground state into a polar phase for it to be considered antiferroelectric. So that in mind, you do still need to know what this ground state is in lead-zirconate. So I've shown it here. It's this PbZrO3 phase. This took more than 40 years for the community to fully solve and agree upon the specifics of this structure. There were some important theoretical contributions made by David Singh in 1995. And since then, there's been debate in the community as to why this particular structure is the structure of lead-zirconate. And that's certainly important to understand, but I'm going to be taking a slightly different approach to focus on the phase competition between this ground state and a different polar phase, and see if we can understand why this phase competition can lead to antiferroelectricity. So what is this metastable polar phase? So if you quickly look through the literature, it becomes pretty apparent that there's a polar R3C phase. It's very low in energy. This can be seen directly from various theoretical works which directly calculate the energy, or from numerous experiments. I've shown one example here. This is the pressure concentration phase diagram of lead-zirconate titanate. You can see that this PbZrO3 phase shares a phase boundary with R3C, both as a function of titanium concentration and pressure. So all this really says PbZrO and R3C are very close in energy. Which brings me to the main question I'll be addressing today, which is how does lead-zirconate transition from this PbZrO structure into this R3C structure? Our hope is that by addressing this question, we'll begin to understand what leads to this kind of double hysteresis loop under an applied electric field. This isn't an obvious question to answer. These two phases look very different. One's orthorhombic, one's rhombohedral. So to start things off, I'm going to just do some simple group theory to try and understand what development distortions are in both phases. So starting from this cubic cross-state structure, I'll go down in symmetry. I'm doing energies for each phase relative to the PbZrO ground state. To get to this R3C phase, we add in antiphase octahedral rotations and polarization along the 1-1-1 axis. And as expected, this phase is just 1 MeV higher in energy than the ground state. To get to the ground state, we add in a slightly different octahedral rotation pattern in this complex set of nonpolar lead-ion displacements along the 1-1-0 axis. So at this point, this subgroup theory doesn't really tell us much. It just says that both these phases are perovskites, which I think most of us already knew. But since we're thinking about switching from this nonpolar state into something that's ultimately going to be polar, I thought, well, if we just change them to be polar but leave them along the same direction, so a polarization along 1-1-0, we'll reach this IMA2 phase, which is just 10 MeV higher than the ground state. So just to show what these two phases are, it's PbZrO on the left and IMA2 on the right. They obviously have the same octahedral rotation pattern, and lead ions displacing along the rotation axis, but the amplitude of both of these distortions is nearly identical in both phases. So really the only difference between these two phases is the pattern of lead displacements. In PbZrO, you have this nonpolar lead displacement pattern indicated by these blue bars, whereas in IMA2, it's polar, all the lead displacements go in the same direction. Now, how does this actually help us relate PbZrO to R3C? As it turns out, IMA2 is actually dynamically unstable to R3C. I'm going to show this schematically down here and with this subgroup tree. So we have a polarization and rotation axis along the 1-1-0 direction, as I've been saying, in IMA2. But we can use first principles to calculate the stability of IMA2. And we find that there's an instability that combines octahedral rotation, and polarization along the 001 axis. You add that into IMA2, it lowers the symmetry to CC, it just rotates both of these axes up. At that point, they're free to rotate, and we find that when we fully relax them in the structure, both axes rotate up to 111, which raises the symmetry to R3C. So you can really think of IMA2 as being unstable to R3C. Which brings me back to my original question. So how does lead zirconate transition from PbA to R3C? So we don't really know what the structural switching pathway is going to look like there. But if you think about this equivalent question, how does PbA transition into IMA2, it becomes much more clear how this is going to happen. I'll show this on the next slide, but what's going to happen is, once you look at those two structures, you can think about this simple domain wall motion happening to switch from PbA to IMA2. So I've redrawn these two structures here, and I'm now labeling this IMA2 phase as the model R3C phase. The idea here is that we're thinking about a transition from PbA to IMA2, but ultimately I'm going to calculate a migration barrier between these two phases, but it will actually lead into the R3C phase. So this IMA2 phase is just a thought experiment, really. We're thinking about how switching will happen from PbA to IMA2, but we're not actually going to calculate that. As I said, the difference between these two structures is just these lead displacement pattern is different in the two phases. And so I want to think about this in terms of domain walls. If you look at the PbA structure, we have what looks like a domain of lead cations displacing to the right. The second domain with the lead cations moving to the left. There should be a domain wall in the middle of this cell, and another one at the edge of the cell. So if you imagine just moving this domain wall in the middle down a little bit, we get something that looks like this that could serve as an intermediate phase between PbA and IMA2. I'm actually going to calculate a lot of barriers between different structures. There will be some larger unit cells. I'm going to need someone to describe that, so I'm going to use a system that I came up with. It's just going to be a series of integers that represents how many consecutive planes of lead cations displaced in the same direction. In this PbM structure, we have two moving to the right, two moving to the left, and we call that the 2-2 structure. Whereas in this intermediate phase, there's these three moving to the right, one moving to the left, so I'll call that 3-1. This model R3C phase, I just call it 1 because everything's moving in the same direction. And to make things a little more simple, I'm just going to draw lead displacements as arrows in the future. So if these blue arrows going to the right means lead moves one way, red arrows going to the left means it moves the other way. So at this point, what I'm going to do is take each of these displacement patterns, freeze them into the cubic structure, add in the A minus C0 octahedral rotation pattern, relax the structure, and then calculate migration barriers between each of these phases. I do that from the 2-2 ground state into R3C. The switching barrier is around 21 MeV per formula unit. If I instead allow it to go through this intermediate state that I proposed, it lowers the barrier slightly, down around 19 MeV per formula unit, so it's not a big decrease. But you can see that the barrier from 2-2 to 3-1 is now only around 10 MeV, and so is the barrier from 3-1 to R3C. So this suggests that as we switch fewer planes of lead cation displacements at a time, the migration barrier is going to decrease. So we thought, what happens if we take an even larger unit cell? So now if we double the unit cell, we have now 8 planes of lead cations to consider, these 8 arrows here. What happens if we now switch one of these at a time? I'm going to walk through the various possible switching pathways here. If you flip one of the red arrows, you'll always end up in some domain of 3, 1, 2, 2. You have to use periodic boundaries to see all this, but trust me, you get some domain of 3, 1, 2, 2. And there you end up with several choices. You can either end up in a supercell 3-1 structure, the 6-2 structure, or the 4-1, 2-1 structure. And there, you'll always end up in some domain of 7-1, and then you end up in the model R3C structure. I've calculated migration barriers for all of these possible pathways. What I'm showing here is just the lowest such migration barrier. It's now just under 10 MeV per formula unit. But just for the sake of clarity, I didn't put all of them on here. The other ones aren't much higher. They're all below 12 MeV. So by doubling the unit cell here, we've basically cut the migration barrier in half and increased the number of possible pathways to connect this 2-2 phase to R3C. The next thought is, does this trend actually continue as we go to larger unit cells? So we tried tripling the unit cell in 120 atoms. At this point, there's actually way too many switching paths to draw out here. There's 28 possibilities. I didn't calculate all of them, I just calculated a few of them. This happens to be the lowest energy one that I found, passing through these structures here. The actual energy is now down around 8 MeV per foot unit. And so it seems like as you go to larger unit cells, this energy is going to keep coming down. More importantly, that there ends up being just way more possible switching pathways to connect this 2-2 ground state to R3C. It's really one of the main points I want to make today. So there's lots of low energy states that connect this non-polar structure to the metastable polar phase. And the reason for this is that you can think of the PbZrO ground state as a series of domains that are 2 atomic layers thick. So you have domain walls that are pretty tightly packed, and they can just nucleate together to form something that looks like IMA2, which is then unstable to R3C. Now, there's obviously a lot of other possible switching pathways that I haven't considered. You can imagine all kinds of things that could happen. Over longer length scales, they're certainly going to become relevant. But on a small local scale, it seems like switching the individual planes of lead cations will give you a very low switching barrier. So this is really the main point that I want to talk about today, but there is a little thing that I want to mention. So I've kind of implicitly shown that these local minima along the switching path, they imply that there's lots of low energy states. But there's actually even more than what I've talked about. You can actually take basically any displacement pattern that fits within the notation that I described earlier, combined with an octahedral rotation pattern of A minus A minus C0, and it will be low in energy. So I don't have time to go into all the details, but when you do that for any displacement pattern that fits within an ADM unit cell or less, you get these energies. Basically, all of these are within 10 MeV of the ground state, is this point here. And so you think that there's various possible things that these states may imply about lead zirconate, but in terms of this talk, they may be relevant for switching in a real sample where the actual crystal structure isn't this pristine 2-2 pattern. At finite temperature, it's not going to be perfectly 2-2. So just as an example of that, highlighting now Setter's work on polar domain walls in lead zirconate. And while there's plenty of interesting physics involved in this paper, I just want to highlight the structure that she found in this domain wall, which is highlighted in this TEM image. She extracted the lead displacements from this image, and these are these blue points. The blue points are the lead displacements along the direction that I've been discussing today. You can see outside of the domain wall, you have this 2-2-2 pattern, which you would expect from the ground state. Within the domain wall, you get something that looks like 2-1-2-1. That structure is something that I actually calculated the energy of, and it's effectively degenerate with the 2-2 ground state. So it's not surprising that it shows up as a domain wall. What this means is that these alternate displacement patterns can already exist in a bulk sample of lead zirconate. And so they might be relevant to switching, even though I hadn't considered them in any of my migration barriers that I calculated earlier. So that brings me to the end here, and really the main point that I want to make is that there's tons of low energy states in lead zirconate. They're all connected by very low migration barriers, and we think that that's what allows lead zirconate to be an antiferroelectric. It certainly seems that this type of energy landscape is sufficient for material to be antiferroelectric, but we don't know if it's necessary, so that's something that we're thinking of going forward. So thank you for your attention. I'll take any questions.
Yes?
It seems to me that on page 18, it seems that the 2-1-2-1 has lower energy than 2-2, right?
Very slightly, yes.
So actually the domain boundary is lower energy than the domain.
Yes, that's actually a slight volume effect. If we use a different pseudopotential or apply a small pressure, we get the ground state correct. But it's like half an MeV. They're effectively degenerate.
David?
Very nice. I was just confused what you meant by per formula unit. So I mean, if you have a unit cell that has 12 formula units in it, you mean you calculate the barrier for that supercell and divide by 12?
Yep.
So then, I mean, if you consider a mechanism in which one row at a time goes, then that's going to go to 0 in the limit that the supercell goes to infinity, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so isn't that the wrong way of counting in some sense?